So the topic today is using nutritional analysis in a meaningful way. And this is what we'll be covering today. So covering nutritional analysis in the law, how it's put into practice, and what nutritional analysis is used for in a commercial and consumer setting, how pupils can use nutritional analysis in a meaningful way, and how you can use nutritional analysis in the classroom as well to support teaching, the curriculum, and examination requirements. And then finally, we've got plenty of links to food effective life resources and some examples as well. So what is nutritional analysis used for? And this is the sort of general kind of commercial consumer use of nutritional analysis. So nutritional analysis lets consumers know what nutrients are provided by the food, and it helps them to make decisions about the foods that they eat. Particularly foods that are in a similar kind of category. So say, if you're comparing two different packets of biscuits, being able to quickly compare the two. It allows people to know if they're meeting the dietary reference values. And so these values are a reference of how much of each nutrient you should be consuming. And when you see this on a label, it will normally be based on an adult female's reference intake. So do bear that in mind, that these values are lower for younger children. And when we talk about our software Explore Food later on, you'll be able to investigate that with different genders and ages as well. Knowing whether or not DRVs are being met enables decisions about whether the diet should be modified in some way, if, say, for example, saturates are too high or if other nutrients are too low. Some nutrition information is required to be displayed by law, and we'll go over that in a bit more detail in a moment. And when you see food products on shelf, typically they've been tested, but nutritional analysis is crucial when they're first being developed. So when the industry are formulating a new product, they'll use nutritional analysis with the base ingredients to try and work out roughly what the product will contain when it goes to market, and make sure that it's meeting the goals that they set for that product, particularly if it's as part of a healthier range. So the book you can see here is Peckhunts and Widdowson's Composition of Foods. And so this is kind of the nutritionist Bible for telling us about the composition of various nutrients in the main kind of foods that we eat in the diet. It was first published in 1940. The most recent published edition was the 7th edition, which was published in 2015. Contains almost 1,200 foods and nearly 50 nutrients. And then the best thing really is that this information is now available online. And you'll see later on when we talk about our tool, this uses that online information to make nutritional analysis really easy. And it's updated regularly online as well. So what information do we have on pack? So this is an example of a back of pack for a product. So this is the back of a shortbread assortment box. So first thing you can see is the name and ingredients listing. So legally, the name of the product is required and the ingredients are also required. You'll see that the allergens are in bold as well there. It's a legal requirement that allergens are marked distinctly in some way. There's also additional information here. So again, pointing consumers towards the allergen information, and also saying that the product is suitable for vegetarians. Storage instructions, the weight of the product, recycling information for the product, and most importantly, and what we're going to be talking about today, the nutrition information, including the reference intakes for key nutrients. So let's have a closer look at the nutrition label on the back of pack. So by law, back of pack labels must include certain information, and they must include information in the correct order. So it's energy in kilojoules and kilocalories, fat in grams, saturated fat in grams, carbohydrate in grams, sugar in grams, protein in grams, and also salt in grams. And if you've seen labels from other countries, for example, the US, some of this information you'll notice is quite different. Some countries report sodium, for example, rather than salt. And those asterisks are just to denote that the wording is normally of which saturates and of which sugars on the back of the pack, because the saturates are as a proportion of fat and the sugars are as a proportion of the total carbohydrate. The information must legally be given per 100 grams or per 100 ml, but it can also be displayed per portion. This is not a legal requirement, but many products will do this as well, will identify kind of what they consider to be a reasonable portion and provide the nutrient value for that as well. This is particularly true with things like confectionery, where 100 grams would be a very large serving size, and so it makes sense to have a per biscuit, per sweet value, for example. Other information is voluntary. So you may see on some products fiber declarations, starch rarely, but can be declared, unsaturated fats, polyols. So polyols are sugar alcohols, and they can be used to sweeten products. Quite often they're declared because high levels of polyols can have a laxative effect, and you may see that on some reduced sugar products. And then also vitamins and minerals. So some products, particularly where they make a claim for vitamins and minerals, will declare the vitamin and mineral content, and will have to make the claim. There'll have to at least be a source of that vitamin and mineral. So that should be on the pack as well. So the front of pack information. So you've probably seen these sort of traffic light front of packs before. So this is a voluntary scheme in the UK, but most major supermarkets and manufacturers do embrace the system and use it in some way. Some products, for example, alcohol, don't show this label as it's not really that applicable. And some products may show a reduced version, just the energy, or a non-colored version. This could be because the packet's very small, or some confectionery products. Some of the others are considered less necessary. And there's a link for guidance of the creation of labels online as well. And then we also have nutrient comparison exercises online. And this can help pupils understand how labels can help them and other consumers to make healthier choices by looking at the front of the label. So just to quickly run through this. So from the left side, we have energy, again in kilojoules and kilocalories. The percentages along the bottom are of the adult's reference intake. So again, it's an adult woman. And you'll see above that there's also a serving measure. So these absolute values will normally be per serving, whatever the serving of the product is. And then the colors represent the thresholds, whether it's low, medium, or high, based on a specific scale. Just a quick side note. So IGD has some really useful resources for trying to talk about particularly front of pack labeling, but talking about labeling and nutrition on products in general. So on the left are just a few examples for infographics. You can see on the bottom a comparison between two different sandwiches, for example, one being marked as the healthier choice. Guidance in the middle about just checking what the portions are. So it's per biscuit, for example, or per pack for the pack on the left. And then they also have guides that you can download as well. And these are specifically for educators and can help you to explain nutrition labels on front of pack, especially with these infographics as well. Really nice and clear. So we've talked about nutritional analysis in terms of products that you'll see in store, what it's used for. So why should we use it in school? So integrating cooking and health nutrition is a really valuable tool, and they can help reinforce each other. And our resources on Food Facts of Life, we focus on, on kind of the whole curriculum where food comes from, cooking and healthy eating. And we really think it's a useful way to kind of integrate those two things together. When learning about the Eat Well guide, pupils can be thinking about the types of ingredients that are in the Eat Well guide, how they can incorporate these into recipes. And nutritional analysis allows them to see what the nutritional value of those foods are when they put them into recipes. Pupils undertaking the non-examined assessment, or NEA, may be asked to adapt methods of cooking, and therefore completing a nutritional analysis of the dishes that they create can be really, really useful to help them to understand what the modifications are doing and by how much their changes are affecting the fat content, fiber content, etc. And another call out for the website, our Cooking for Health area is full of practical uses for nutritional analysis. We'll talk through some of the resources later, but that's a really, really useful area that's chock full of resources for this. So performing nutritional analysis in school. So the first thing to do is make sure you understand the recipe and also the processing steps before you do this in a lesson. You'll need to know the weights of the ingredient and the number of portions for your recipe as well. And Depending on how your ingredients are processed, the values in the calculation may differ. For example, if you peel something or if you cook something in a different way, that can modify your output. And so there's 5 main steps that we've identified to ensure that this works successfully and is consistent for all of your pupils if they're doing analysis in the classroom. So step 1, check the recipe. Check that your recipe contains all of the information that you need. So there's a few bullet points here, just things to consider for this example, which is chili con carne. So the weight of the tin tomatoes is not defined. Generally, tins are quite standard, but it can be worth understanding what that weight is, because when you do your analysis, you'll have to put the weight in grams. The number of onions is not defined, so you need to know how many onions you've got, and then you need to know the size of the onions and therefore how much weight of onions you're going to put in. The carrot size, again, is not specified here. The minced beef, if it was standard minced beef, much higher fat content and therefore higher calories as well. If it's lean minced beef, less. So you have to make a decision when you're doing the analysis about what you're using. The bay leaf, so not much nutrition in a bay leaf anyway, but it will be removed in the final dish. And so you don't need to include it for the nutrition because it won't be eaten. 400 grams of kidney beans. The question is, are these kidney beans drained or is this the weight with the liquid? So just need a bit more information there. How much seasoning? So you need to estimate this. It's just a taste. So you need to estimate, try and put a gram value to that. And then a consideration here. So this recipe has a tip. And again, the tip's sort of non-specific with the portions of rice and yogurt. And you need to make a decision as to whether you analyze it with or without the tip, or it may be a case where you want to analyze it with and without and see what difference those additions make in making it a full meal. Another thing to consider is volume and weight. So you may see in recipes that ingredients are in mil or in grams. So most of the time, volume and weight measurements are similar. So mils and grams will be quite similar. However, different densities of liquid can affect its weight. So you can see in the table here at the bottom, the example of water, milk, and vegetable oil. So 100 ml of all of these, 100 grams for water, so 1-to-1. Milk, because of its protein content predominantly and also sugars, is slightly higher, 103 grams. And this can vary based on whether it's skimmed, semi-skimmed, etc. And vegetable oil is less dense, and therefore 100 ml of vegetable oil is 91 grams. So it can be worth doing the conversions for these. Generally speaking, most liquids will be quite similar, but you can find specific gravity or relative density for certain liquids, and these are a useful guide for kind of key ones, milk and vegetable oil. And an important example is ice cream. So ice cream has a very low specific gravity of 0.55, and basically what that means is that 100 ml of ice cream will weigh about 0.55 grams. And this can make a big difference in terms of the calories. So you want to make sure something like that, you do convert that from mil into grams to make sure that you're processing the nutrition information properly. Step 2 is to check your portions. So check for generic portion sizes in the recipe. Words like dollop, things like comparisons between large and small, various units that don't have gram weights. You need to make sure that these are converted or at least estimated, and then put them in Explore Food, which we'll show you later, in grams as well. It might be worth annotating the recipe to show the estimated gram weight. Most recipes that you see won't have every single ingredient weighed in grams, so you can write that on the recipe. If you're doing it in a lesson, you can either allow pupils to estimate that themselves and try and work out the gram weights, or you can set that at the start, and that way you can compare each pupil's analysis and make sure that they're getting the same results if they've got those same gram weights. When you use the tool, in the teacher's notes, there are portion sizes for some key foods that you can use. And there's also other activities like the weighing and measuring activity on Food Facts of Life, which helps pupils understand the importance of measuring accurately when doing recipes. Step 3, check preparation methods. So some foods can change in weight and or their nutrient value depending on how you prepare them. So things like peeling, trimming, deboning, deshelling will remove weight and occasionally also remove some nutrient value. For example, if you use potatoes with skins versus potatoes without skins, you're going to reduce the weight slightly by peeling the potato, but you're also going to significantly reduce the fiber content. So that's always worth bearing in mind. Explore Food may offer several different options for an ingredient. And again, we'll look at this later. When you input your ingredient, you can usually have a skin on or skin on option or a bone versus deboned option. And so you can pick the one that's most relevant to your recipe. Step 4 is checking the cooking methods. So foods can change weight when they're cooked. So pasta, for example, rice, noodles, when they absorb water, they can more than double in weight. And this means that the nutrition per 100 grams dried is significantly higher than 100 grams cooked, because 100 grams dried will be more than 200 to 240 grams when cooked. So just bear that in mind. Usually it's better to use the cooked value if you know how much is going to be coming out at the end of the recipe, but you can use dried as well. You just need to make sure that you know how much is going in and how much is coming out. Other foods that, for example, that are baked may reduce in weight because water can evaporate from the mixture as it cooks. And then we've got another link here at the bottom. We'll be sharing this presentation afterwards with all the links to our healthier cooking methods section, and that has some more information about different cooking methods, how they can be used, which are healthy, which are less healthy, and that can be used when considering also the water gain or loss. And step 5, so once you've looked at your recipe and performed steps 1 to 4, it's time to perform your analysis. So you can input ingredients and their weight, and this is for the whole recipe. You can put the portion sizes in later into Explore Food or Calculator. Check where you've selected cooked or dried versions of ingredients, and do bear in mind that Mercantz is very comprehensive, but it may not have exact matches for the ingredient you want. So you may want to consider similar ingredients either on the calculator or to put in the recipe that could be a suitable replacement. So for example, there may be a certain type of canned bean that isn't on Explore Food, and you may want to use a different kind of canned bean as an equivalent to perform your analysis. And then finally, you want to input the number of portions into the calculator, which will show you values per portions, as well as for the whole recipe and also for 100 grams. So we talked a little bit about Explore Food, alluded to this throughout. So what is Explore Food? So Explore Food is our online nutritional analysis tool, and this uses the Mercantz and Widdowson data that we talked about earlier. It allows students to calculate the energy and nutrients provided by their recipes, model different portion sizes, compare the diet to the DRVs, and this will also allow you to do it by age and by gender as well. And then you can also save your work and continue at any time. So you could set one of these up for a lesson or partially set it up for a lesson and save it, and then you can complete that in the lesson. So that's another good way to save time. And you can also create labels and print labels from this as well. And I'll show you an example of that shortly. So here's an example analysis. So on the bottom left here, this is the kind of label that you will create when you've entered your ingredients into Explore Food. So this is for a home-cooked soup with seasonal vegetables. And what you can do is you can run your analysis, creating your own soup, and then you can have a can of soup from the shop, and you can compare the labels as well. See, are there different colors on the traffic lights? Are there any nutrients that are significantly higher in one or the other? And get pupils to think about and talk about why that might be. Okay, so I'm going to try and show a demo here. I recorded this video earlier. The sound was a little bit robotic, unfortunately, last time I checked it. So what I'll do is I will try and share it. Francis, if you could let me know just if there's any issues with the sound, and then I'll try and just kind of talk over it without sound. So I'll just quickly share that now. And then Francis, do we have any questions or comments to this point?
The only one, Ewan, was just very quick one about, does Explore Food do a costing of the dish?
No, unfortunately not. But we do have lots of resources on the website about cost, which we'll go through later on as well. So hopefully that'll be able to help you with that. And it's something that you can certainly integrate once you've created your recipe.
Great, thanks, Ewen.
Okay, so just bear with me one moment. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a quick demonstration of how you can use Explore Food to analyze a recipe using our example from the presentation, which you can see the recipe on the left there. So first, we're going to navigate to explorefoods.foodeffectslive.org.uk. Alternatively, you can Google this, and it should be the first, if not the first result on the first page. And this is what it will look like when you get to the website. So you'll see on the right that there is a continuum project. So when you name your recipe, you can save it and you can return to it later if you haven't quite completed it. In the bottom right here, you can see the privacy legal disclaimer acknowledgements, but importantly, a link to the teacher's notes, which we've also provided in the presentation. And we're going to go ahead and calculate a recipe. So I'm going to name our recipe, and the recipe name is the Easy Veg Frittatas. So and you'll see a screen that comes up like this. And now you can start adding your ingredients. Now, as we discussed, sometimes when you look at a recipe, there might not be an exact weight. And so you need to try and determine this before you start your analysis. So we've made some estimates for this. So the 2 spring onions, we're saying that's going to be about 30 grams, coriander about 25, 3 eggs about 150 grams. This can vary depending on the size of your eggs, of course. 40 ml of semi-skimmed milk, that's about 41.2 grams if you want to use a conversion. But milk and water are quite similar. So if you wanted to estimate, you could do 40 ml to 40 grams. Pepper, we're going to say about 5 grams, and oil about 5 grams as well. So I'll start putting the ingredients in here. So when you start typing, you'll immediately see some options appear. And in this case, we want spring onions, bulbs only. And then we put in our weight, 30 grams. And you'll see the nutrients appear on the right. The energy in kilojoules and calories, fat, saturates, carbohydrate, total sugars. You'll see some other ones here that you won't necessarily see on a normal food label: monounsaturates, polyunsaturates. So this is data that McCants and Widdowson stores, that you don't necessarily need this for your label, as we'll see later. And we'll continue to add the ingredients here. So let's search for cheddar. And again, we've got some different options here. So if you were going to modify this recipe, you might say, okay, I'm going to use a half fat cheese or a 30% less fat cheese. And you can see what difference that makes to the fat content of the final dish. For now, we'll just select cheese cheddar English. And we'll put our 50 grams in. And you see at the bottom here, all of these totals are going to start adding up. You'll get the gram weight on this side and all of the others coming up along the bottom. So I'm just going to put in the other ingredients now, and we'll skip ahead to when they're all in. Okay, so now that we've got all our ingredients input, we can click View Summary at the bottom. And this will show you the amounts per recipe, per 100 grams, and then also the portions. So let's say we set the portions of this to 3. You'll see this third column will change, and you can adjust the number of portions in here to reflect that. You can then go back to edit the recipe, or you can create a label by clicking the orange button at the bottom. Easy Veg Frittatas. And here you'll want to select whether it's a food or a drink. This is because there are different calculations for the front of pack label for foods and drinks. Click Create Label, and here we are. And you can save or print that. So you've got your nutrition information, the back of pack, and you've got your front of pack information here. And you can see that we've got 3 ambers for fat, saturates, and salt. So this might be something that you would target for a modification and try and see if you can reduce these into green. Certainly salt looks like something that could be improved here. And then, of course, as you said, you can save in the top right here as well. If you click Compare with the DRVs at the bottom right, you can enter the age of your self or your pupil and the gender as well. and it will calculate the percentage of the DRVs that are being provided by the recipe that you put in. So you can see almost 30% of the DRV for protein, 16% of the DRV for saturated fat being provided by this recipe, 4.2% fiber. And again, this can be a useful indication of where you might want to target modifications. Thanks, everyone. So apologies if anyone had a bit of lag there or any audio issues. We will share the video afterwards as well, so you'll be able to watch it back. But hopefully that gives you an idea of how you would use the tool or how your pupils might use it. And it's just a quick 4-minute video that you can refer back to. So one of the things that we talked about a little bit throughout is modifying recipes. So when you modify your recipes to make them healthier, always consider the principles of the Eat Well guide. So the key messages: eat lots of fruit and vegetables, cut down on saturated fat, salt and sugar, eat more fish, including a portion of oily fish per week, base meals on starchy carbohydrates, choose lower fat and lower sugar dairy products, and unsaturated oils and spreads. And so when pupils are looking at recipes, these are the kind of things that they'll want to bear in mind. So for example, if a recipe has butter in it, is there the possibility to change it for a less saturated fat? Is there an opportunity to use a lower fat cheese, for example? Can they switch to whole grains to get more fiber? Those are the kind of considerations that we're looking for. So some tips for modification. So reduce salt. So salt's obviously an important flavoring, but you can reduce salt by adding other seasonings. So different herbs, spices, chili, lemon juice, for example, can help you to reduce the amount of salt in a recipe, but maintain flavor. Increase the proportion of fruit and vegetables. Fruit and vegetables tend to be nutrient dense, but fairly low in calories for their weight. So increasing the proportion of fruit and vegetables in a dish can increase the portion size without massively increasing the calories. Choose fruit canned in juice rather than syrup. It's additional nutrients in the juice, and the syrup tends to be higher in sugar and calories. Reduce fat varieties, dairies, and spread, as we said. Swap carbs for whole grain varieties. And importantly, consider your portion sizes. Is the set portion size of the recipe actually too large? And this may depend on the age of your pupils as well, as to how big the portion size should be. So there's a link here to the teacher's notes for some portion size estimates. And then also on the nutrition.org.uk website, the British Nutrition Foundation site, we've recently updated our guidance on portion sizes. And this includes both gram weights, but it also includes simple measures estimated with hands, which enable pupils to very quickly understand kind of how much a portion is without having to weigh everything out. So moving on to some resources. So we've got nutritional analysis case studies here. These can be really, really good tools, whether analyzing either an individual recipe or the diet, as in this case. Each of these will have a different age and gender as well. So when you check the DRVs, it will let you know the percentage of DRVs that are relevant to each age group. So there's plenty more of these on the website as well. Modifying recipes, as we said, loads of stuff on this in the Cooking for Health section. So again, we've got those considerations for the Eat Well guide here. We've got sheets about modifying recipes, loads of these. This is an example with pasta and tomato sauce, and pupils can come up with different ways that they can modify the recipe. For example, changing to whole grain pasta, changing the cooking oil, adding vegetables, different fruits, and things like that. And then some other resources, for example, the small change, big difference. And this is a bit more specific and guided. So for example, this cauliflower cheese, you can identify ways to reduce the saturated fat in this recipe, and then also link that back to the nutrition messages that they're being taught at the same time. Cooking on a budget resources. So somebody did ask about costing in the chat earlier. So Explore Food itself doesn't do costing for you, but we have lots and lots of resources that can help you with costing and budgets as well. So this is just one page on the left of the teacher's guide, which has links all of the resources for the cooking in a budget. So definitely check that out. We've got some brilliant resources like this super soup, and this can be really, really good kind of low cost, use what you've got way to create a soup. And you could choose between 3 different stocks, different proteins, different vegetables, different starchy carbs, and different herbs and spices to kind of create your own soup. And then we've got also the spreadsheet about costing a recipe at the bottom. So again, this can be really useful to understand how you can cost a recipe, especially if you need to bulk buy ingredients for a particular cooking lesson. And then finally on the right there, the weekly food shopping investigation. So it's different food groups from the guide, and then sort of being able to go through a receipt, split the foods up into the groups, and work out how much the items in each of those groups were as a percentage of the cost. Food labeling and health claims resources. So these are from the 14-16 food labeling and health claims area. So much more label information on food labels that's pupil suitable, and then questions about different kinds of labels, and the one in the middle also will ask you to go on to Explore Food and check different kind of products and how much they vary the nutrient content of different foods. And then we've got quizzes as well, like the food labeling quiz on the right. We've also got a food labeling and health claims knowledge organizer. So our knowledge organizers are some of our most popular resources. We've got them for 11 to 14 and 14 to 16 linked there. And they basically are kind of a need to know for each topic. You can cut out the boxes and use them in various different ways. And this kind of has all of the key terms and all the basic information about front of pack labeling, back of pack labeling, but also date marks, additives, etc. And it's just a really, really useful guide either for yourself before a lesson or for your pupils to use to either in a lesson or for revision. Serving size resources as well. So as we've said earlier, portions are really important. There's calculation sheets here. For example, depending how many times you divide the pizza, how much energy is there per serving of pizza. Front of pack nutrition labels. So looking at the portion size on the front of packs, looking at the traffic lights again. And then we've also got this graph on the right here, which just shows the energy provided by different serving sizes of food. So just kind of getting an idea of how many calories are in 100 grams of food. And you can ask pupils to modify the serving size in the sheet, and it will modify the amount of energy in the food as well. And loads more nutritional analysis things linked here, diet diaries, diet diary analysis, portion sizes, which is in the teacher's guide as well. And then basic guides for pupils to go through on Explore Food and create a label. So again, really useful resource there. They want to read through that and do that themselves. So to conclude then, so nutritional analysis is really important for manufacturers in the formulation of their products. But it's also really useful in schools, helping pupils to embed the concepts of nutrition and cooking together. And it also can help supporting things like numeracy development. And we've actually got on the bottom here a link to a presentation about ICT, numeracy, and literacy. And this is a really useful way to kind of, particularly for the numeracy aspect and ICT, using an online tool, improve those alongside health and nutrition knowledge. Understanding that the difference made through modifying recipes demonstrates progression and supports curricular and examination requirements. So, for example, the NEA, as we mentioned earlier, will ask pupils to modify recipes. So it's a really useful tool for that. Explore Food, our online tool, uses the McCants and Widdowson composition of foods dataset. And not only does this tool make nutritional analysis easier because it's all in one place and it will create the label for you, it also makes sure that the data is scientifically sound as well. and it will be the same between each analysis. So it's useful for you to be able to compare. And as we mentioned, further is also available on the website. There's loads and loads of links all through the presentation, and hopefully you'll find some really useful stuff in there. As Francis said in the chat, yes, it's all free as well. I should have mentioned that. Yeah, it's all absolutely free. So thank you very much. All that remains for me to say is thank you everybody for coming. And here are some links for keeping up to date with us. You can sign up on our homepage for education news. You can also sign up for our PPD newsletter. So this is a more specifically training related newsletter. Excuse me, and you can sign up at the link there for that as well. Follow us on Twitter at Food Facts of Life, and do keep in touch. Our brand new education email address, education@nutrition.org.uk, and we'll get back to you to answer any questions that you may have. Additionally, we've got some more training coming up. So regional conferences. This Saturday, our English conference, we have the last few places available. So if anybody would like to join us, this is in person at Ambassadors Bloomsbury in London. Yeah, I think there's 2 or 3 places available for that. So if that's something that you'd be interested in, do definitely jump in. Northern Ireland, if you're from Northern Ireland, that's on Saturday, 25th of February, and that one is online. And then the Welsh conference, that's on the 11th of March, and that's in person in Cardiff, and there's places available for that as well. Webinars, so 2 great webinars coming up. The first one's on reformulation, and this can be a really, really interesting thing to kind of tie in with nutritional analysis, thinking about how a reformulated product might come across differently if it was run through Explore Food, for example. That'll be fascinating. And then we also have a nutrition and gut health webinar on the 22nd of March from BNF's own Dr. Stacey Lockyer, and that should be fascinating as well. And finally, on the 4th of February, we have the virtual practical workshop, Food Science and Practical Food Skills. So there is actually a waiting list for this. But if you are interested, do join the waiting list, and we'll see if we can get you a place. Our workshops are always really, really popular, so do keep an eye out for more workshops coming up soon. And there's a link there to all of our training. And all of our training is absolutely free, so do come along. So thank you very much. When the webinar finishes, you should be automatically redirected to the evaluation. There's also the link on this page, which will take you to the evaluation. And once you've completed the evaluation, you'll receive a link to download your certificate. You can add your name and print it out for your records. Like I said, if you do have any issues with the evaluation or the certificates, do get in touch, education@nutrition.org.uk. So thanks again, everybody, for coming. And France, I don't know if there's anything else, if there are any questions or anything in the chat.
There is one question, Ewen. So okay. You may have mentioned this before, but does Explore Food calculate the amounts of other nutrients, for example, calcium?
Yes, I believe, excuse me, I believe that other nutrients are on there, but you won't see them on the label, because the label will only show the legal requirements for the front of pack and the back of pack. But if a food has calcium on it, it should show on the main nutrition table.
Great, and that's it. I can't see any more questions in the chat, but thank you, and that was really interesting, and I really liked the video. Well done for doing that. I think that's a really useful thing, and it would be good if we could get that up online so that the teachers can show their pupils how to use it, how to use Explore Food. So thank you very much.
Great. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Yes.